welcome again once more to I say show in the loosest possible terms, loosest possible meaning of the word. Platform, soapbox, what have you, demonstration. I'm Ryan, or Comrade Bubbles, whichever. I don't care either way. I am a moderator in chat, so behave. I do know when you've been naughty because I can read chat, so bear that in mind. I am disabled. I do experience muscle spasms that can lead to twitching, stuttering, stammering, slurring of speech, what have you. I do try to take steps to mitigate that through stimming when I'm talking, and I know it can be occasionally unpleasant for some people to witness, and I apologise if I make you uncomfortable. I can't apologise for my disability, but I can apologise for making you uncomfortable. I do also struggle with multiple trains of thought, so I will try to finish one before going on to another. If someone in chat does raise a question, and you can see right here, over here-ish, it says, please do feel free to ask questions. I will answer them as best I can. If I cannot... If I cannot answer the question because I lack the information, I'll try to point you to someone who can, or a resource that has the information. If not, I will do the, that's a good question, moving on tactic of acknowledging a question but not answering it. I also, I do this, I take great pains to point this out every time, but I do not work for Onyx Path. I'm not a representative of Onyx Path. I'm simply a fan with a platform, and they keep allowing me to do this. They've allowed me to do this for 51 episodes. If I'd streamed last time I was supposed to stream, that would have been a year's worth of content, one a week. And that is mind-boggling that I've gotten away with this scam for that long. But hey, I'm still doing this. A channel, and that's all that matters. Well, I'm glad you think so, Shadow of Dragons. I am glad you think so. Hopefully the show is entertaining enough to warrant your confidence. Yes, I'm just a fan. I'm not paid by Onyx Path to do this in any way, shape, or form. So, usual starting point, really. The best place for any kind of updates or anything like that from Onyx Path, as ever, being the Monday meeting notes. There is a link if you desire one. We won't reveal your scam. Unstable, you've been playing along with my scam for quite some time now, so I think you're confident. I think I'm confident in trusting you, ish, maybe. I don't know. I have my doubts sometimes. Anyway, Monday meeting note starts off with the Christmas wishes of the Monday meeting crew, which are the most senior members of the Onyx Path team. The Trinity Continuum anima Kickstarter finished last week. Topped over 1,000 backers, 200% backing, got some stretch goals done, so that's great. Fantastic. Very exciting for me is that Scion, Origin, and Hero are now supported in Foundry. Foundry is a virtual tabletop alternative to Roll20. Foundry is a pay once, get lifetime access to it model. You buy the license key, you get the software, that's it. It does pretty much everything Roll20 does with a paid account, but you pay once rather than on a monthly rolling subscription. I personally prefer Foundry. However, Roll20 is much better as a... Roll20 has the advantage in that it's a lot less intensive on system resources, so more people can access it, whereas a Foundry can be quite graphically intensive, so something to bear in mind. As I say, I prefer Foundry, but your mileage may vary. But Scion is now supported in Foundry. Anyone who's curious about Demon the Fallen's 20th anniversary coming up, only Paradox can approve anything relating to 20th anniversary stuff, and Onyx Path cannot talk about anything they may have submitted to Paradox for approval or not, so there'll be nothing out about that. Trinity Continuum Assassins is still available for pre-order on DriveThru RPG. Couple of sales going on in DriveThru RPG. Teach your kids to game. There's a Legend Lore bundle of the core rulebook, the GM screen, and I think volumes 1 through 3 of the original comics that inspired the game. Indie Press Revolution have an end of year sale. That's physical books for Onyx Path games. Today, not immediately after this show, but later in the day, like 7 hours later, is the first of a double feature on the channel. I think the name assigned was the terrific Travis Legg. Plastic Age plays in chat when he occasionally joins. Will be I see stuff in chat and I will address it momentarily. We'll be running the Party Beach creature feature, the jumpstart for They Came From Beneath the Sea, I believe it is. And The Haunting of Abbeyhem Priory, directed or run by Joshua Deutsch, I think it's Deutsch, who actually I have met. We have played Scion together. I ran way back at the beginning of the pandemic. I believe Joshua was one of my players when I ran the Scion adventure I wrote on stream. He's pretty cool. But that's They Came From Beneath the Grave, Beyond the Grave jumpstart. So both the jumpstarts are being run later. Beneath the Sea, They Came From Beneath the Sea is at 6 p.m. EST. They Came From Beyond the Grave is at 9 p.m. EST, I believe. There will be a Monday meeting notes next week, but there is no actual Monday meeting. So, there's that. Standard usual thing of the meeting. You know what? We'll take a break. We'll address chat. Whoa! Speaking of Travis and Plastic Age Plays, 200 bits from Plastic Age Plays. Founder's fantastic. Use it with Pathfinder 2 and it's amazing. Yep. Princess Brawhammer 1, fantastic name. 2, yeah, I'm a complete Foundry fan. I've been using it since basically the start of the pandemic for my D&D games. Unfortunately, as I say, it's not the most... it's not the easiest thing to run in terms of system requirements, but it is what it is. It's the trade-off of having all of the features available to you versus having nothing available to you. And the fact that Foundry is self-hosted as well is just a huge bonus. Back to the Monday meeting notes. So I've covered the 3 shows today. We've got my show. We've got the double feature later this evening. Nothing else for the rest of the week until Sunday, which isn't that Boxing Day? Yeah, Sunday's Boxing Day, where Devil's Look Gaming Hymns of the Unconquered Sun will be playing. Now, I have a slight admission to make here. I was a bit initially, you have that first thought, the first initial gut reaction. I got a bit bummed out when they got the highlight of the week, because they've had it a couple of times now, and I've had it once. But that was a selfish thought, and their production value, the quality of their actual plays, the full costume, everything that they do is incredible. I wish that they put their material up on YouTube, because I can't get on with the Twitch app on my tablet or my consoles. I stream a lot and I work at my computer a lot, so I don't want to be sitting at my computer watching actual plays as well. So unfortunate as that, but if you haven't checked out anything by Devil's Look Gaming, I highly recommend it for ridiculously high quality content. Their work is incredible. Hymns of the Unconquered Sun being Exalted 3rd edition or Essence, I'm not entirely sure which, but it's definitely Exalted content using the latest version of the rules, and the costumes are incredible. They put a trailer together that I think is on YouTube, and that's just, yeah, anyway, moving on. Standard links to actual plays, anime stuff from the recent Kickstarter. Virtual tabletop stuff's relatively unchanged. Sales I covered. If you do watch the jump starts later, hey, you can buy them on Wednesday. They are releasing on Wednesday. The Party Beach creature feature and the Haunting of Abbeyhem Priory. And you can, as a reminder, pre-order Trinity Continuum Assassins. I'm sorry, Travis, I'm butchering your book's title. Assassins. I think that's your book. Anyway, what else is exciting in the project timelines things for Trinity Continuum? Aberrant's got a novella, looking at Plastic Age Plays. That's in red lines, so that got yeeted there. That's pretty cool. I'm excited about Wild Hunt for Scion and manuscript approval, but that's my personal preferences. So much stuff in post-editing development. I'm glad the bottleneck has eased slightly. I think that's mostly it. Lots of stuff at press now, which is cool. Or it would be if shipping issues weren't a problem. Right, okay. That's all of that stuff. Essence, grand. There you go, Essence. So difference for those who don't know between Exalted 3rd Edition and Essence is essentially the same rules, but with 200 pages less. It's still a chunky rulebook, but it's slimmed down. It's designed to be everything you need is in one book. Playable rules for all of the Exalt types, and to speed things up. Exalted 3rd Edition is a crunchy system. I've got nothing to do with Assassins, just a fan. I thought you were involved in some TC projects, but we'll leave that behind. We'll leave that behind as I jump into explaining what the Trinity Continuum is. The actual meat of the show after 10 minutes of extremely rushed babbling. Trinity Continuum is a game that uses the Storypath system. Storypath is a spiritual successor to the Storyteller system, but it's Onyx Path's in-house system. Storyteller, obviously, more a White Wolf Paradox thing. It's a D10 or a 10-sided die pool system based on skills rather than classes, which you may be familiar with through games like D&D, Pugmire, Scarred Lands, Legend Lore. But it's skill-based rather than class-based, so you count how many dots you have between the skill and your attribute. When making any kind of test, you roll that number of 10-sided dice, and, Bob's your uncle. A saying I don't think I've used on the show before, 51 episodes, and I likely won't for another 51. Regardless, now that's obviously just the basic rule. That's the... So, slight digression. You may have guessed from the fact I'm doing this, I have a fair amount of experience with role-playing games, and with role-playing games of a wide variety of systems, and teaching them as well. I don't just play, I teach games when I can, obviously. I love teaching games to people and teaching new games to people. And a lot of the time, obviously, a lot of people struggle to try new games because they stick with what's familiar, right? It's human nature. You stick with what you know. It's comfortable. It's reassuring. You don't have to push yourself too far. And a lot of people will take a look at a rulebook and go, there's too much there. There's too many words, too many rules I have to understand. But I know this game already, so why would I learn a new game? Obviously, this is an issue, particularly with D&D, because it has such a huge market share. So everyone, and all of Critical Role and all of those APs out there that play D&D in one form or another, and D&D has 3 rulebooks. There's no two ways about it. It has 3 core rulebooks. Admittedly, you only need one to play, but still. So when you're going, hey, but you play this incredibly complex game already, what's putting you off about this game that is 1 rulebook? The thing here being that Trinity Continuum Core is, as it suggests, a single core rulebook that you will then use to play other games in the Trinity timeline, but you only actually need the core rulebook. I believe... I think it was last stream I was discussing this, and the talents were put in so that people could play things with a bit of oomph into the core rulebook itself. So you could play pseudo-superheroic characters without playing Aberrant, for example, because you can have the powers from the core rulebook. And for more on that, watch the Trinity Continuum Core Showcase, Storypath Showcase that Travis ran, that I played in, where we demonstrate how you can have superpowers without being a superhero. And commit Grand Theft Auto, and various other things. But even then, because I don't have the TC book physically, but I do have the Scion book, so... Yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm going to mute the mic so that my weird straining noises don't come across. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. I went blurry again. Cyberpunk Mr. Rogers. Exactly! Shout out to GD. And you can buy the show notes from that, so you could run the very same adventure with the very same characters and get a completely different outcome. Because that's something you can do. Hang on, I'm fixing the webcam. There we go. So, as I was saying, I don't have the TC book physically, but I do have the Scion Origin physically, and Hero, and eventually Demigod when that comes out. But still, so rulebook, right? Technically, this is all you need to play games of Scion. Everything else is extra player options. You could play people have played entire campaigns, Chronicles of Scion, using this book alone. It's not very thick. It's not very weighty. It is, in fact, thinner than the Player's Handbook, for those of you familiar with the Player's Handbook. And rocks in at a total of 195-ish pages. Even this, I'll answer your question in a moment, unless Travis does. All you need to know from this, and by extension Trinity Continuum core rulebook, or any role-playing game you can think of, ultimately, all you need to know is how the dice system works. If it's a dice-based game. If it's diceless, you need to know how the diceless system works for conflict, for resolution of whatever that system resolves. Because it doesn't have to be conflict, obviously, or challenges. So, and here's the point that I've been... Did he get shot? Sorry, yeah. Did he get shot first like Castor in Shadowrun? Frequently, yes, but he didn't care because he had so much armor, it made no difference. It just bounced off of his robotic chest. One of the first significant downsides of science is refuses to take important issues like the scone argument or the scone debate. Hey, you know what? That's an important debate, and you can have that at your table. And to have that debate, all you really need is this book. Homie was bullet. Wasn't he like soft armor 4 or something? It was ridiculous. Of course, he had the downside that if his robotic chest was ever removed, he'd die. So, swings and roundabouts. Yeah, but all you need is to understand. Hey, Zach, how you doing? Hope you don't mind me saying Zach. It is all you need to know, no matter how beefy the rule book. Exalted 3rd edition, classic example. It's like 600 pages long or something ridiculous. I may be exaggerating. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact number. I could search it, but we're here for other things. I'm sure someone else can check and correct me. Please do. Princess Brohammer, I've seen your point. I'm just going to finish my current tangent and then I'll address it. All you need to know out of however thick the rulebook is, whether it's the brick that is Exalted 3rd edition, or the a one-page RPG from me. I've written one-page RPGs, let's say, and that's true. I have. Look it up. Is how the game fundamentally resolves anything, whether that is dice-based, as a lot of role-playing games are, or diceless, or conversation-based, where you just agree on the best outcome. Even to some extent Fiasco, where the outcome is determined in advance. That's all you actually need to know to play the game. Everything on top of that is just extra stuff. So, I've touched on this in when I was writing the Scion adventure, when I was running the Chronicles of Darkness adventure. When I do teach people games, the first scene usually, and Byron Mask in chat, when I get around to that Skyrim game we've been discussing, this will almost certainly be the case. The first scene will have virtually no stakes to it. It will simply be, this is how the game works at its most stripped down basic level. This is how you resolve a challenge, a test, a puzzle, contest, what have you. Whatever you want to call the dice rolling mechanic. This is what it does. This is how you play the game. You need nothing. You need to know nothing other than this to have fun with this game. And even then, you don't really need to play it as written. But TLDR, you don't need the whole rules. You just need to know how the game works to play it. What do you find yourself most doing on Onyx Path games? Like D&D is a system that's spec for fighting monsters. What is the system spec for? Okay, Princess Brohammer. As Pastor Case Plays has pointed out, Trinity Continuum and Story Path games in general are geared towards 3 kinds of scene. Action adventure, which is your standard combat. But it can be car chases. It can be anything that is adventurous or exciting. investigation, exactly what it sounds like, and intrigue, which is the social interaction side of things. Those are the three kinds of scenes the story path system supports. With it being a skill-based system, as Plastic Age Players has pointed out, it's about highly skilled characters doing amazing things. So Trinity Continuum Core, if you ignore the talents, which is what the superhero characters are called, you can play just a normal person, every person on the street, trying to get away from gendered language. It's a constant struggle after, literally decades of it for me. The every person on the street doing something, whatever story you're going through at the table. On top of that, each book obviously adds its own flavor. So I've gone blurry again, gosh dang it. So I mentioned earlier Aberrant. Aberrant is set in the near future, and you play superheroes. There's no two ways about it. You literally play superheroes. Other games in the Trinity Continuum line include Adventure, where it's all about pulp adventure. You're still doing the same action, adventure, investigation, intrigue scenes, but in the 20s and 30s, punching Nazis riding robo-dinosaurs, for example. There's also TC Aeon, which is the far future and your psychic characters, or psionic characters, I guess. The most recent one, Anima, is more of a cyberpunk. You've got the cyberpunk dystopia of the real world, and then the MMO Terror Surge that everyone plays in virtual reality, and how those two mix and match, and how people react to that kind of thing. The other games that use the story path system, I've literally just showed you the Scion rulebook. Scion is about playing primarily the children of the gods from a wide variety of pantheons. Oh, right, assassins. Sorry, Zach, you were right. Assassins. You play assassins. In the, I believe that's like modern day contemporary assassins, based just for the core rulebook. Scion, you play the children of the gods primarily. You can play other supernatural creatures like Kitsune, Tengu, Therianthropes, wide variety of things. But primarily it's about dealing with your journey from, hey, I'm a normal person that can do kind of maybe a couple of minor things that are supernatural in nature, to a full-on apotheosis of being a god. And that covers Scion Origin, where you're just a kind of everyday street level person. Scion Hero, where you're starting to make your own legend. You don't tell it, you make it. To Demigod, where you are a demigod. And then after Demigod, is God. And you are a god at that point, and how you deal with the world as it tries to affect you in that instance. Other story path games, off the top of my head, are that they came from. I mentioned those earlier. They came from Beneath the Sea and they came from Beyond the Grave. Those use the story path system to evoke movie genres. So Beneath the Sea is like the 50s, 60s creature feature. B-movies. And Beyond the Grave is like Hammer horror. And because a lot of those were set in the Victorian period, also Victorian, kind of gothic horror style films. Other games that have been mentioned, they came from Cyclops Cave, being like the adventure classics of yesteryear, like Jason and the Argonauts. I hope that answered the question. That's what Storypath does. It does. It's easily reskinnable. What is the statistical distribution like? For instance, D&D being a D20 system tends to be very swingy in terms if you're about as likely to get low results. High result dice pool systems meanwhile tend to make results a little more consistent and predictable. Where does the system fall there? Okay, so it is as you've pointed out, it is a dice pool system. So you're all a number of D10. In most Storypath games, in the core rulebook certainly. So Scion Origin and Hero. Trinity Continuum Core, I believe Aberrant also, and the target number is 8, so you've got 3 chances to get that on a 10-sided die. So roughly a 1 in 3 chance of a success on any one die. The different games handle 10s differently. They came from it counts as 2 successes, and then in This is the downside of knowing so many systems. They kind of all blur. I believe I'm correct in saying in both Scion and Trinity Continuum, 10s explode, so you reroll them. But I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. So your statistical distribution is you've got a 1 in 3 chance of succeeding on any die, and it's all about buying off the difficulty of a thing. So I'll fall back on the classic example. So you're trying to climb a wall, right? The wall is difficulty 1. You roll your pool of dice. If you get 1, 8, 9, or 10, you have succeeded. Congratulations. But now you're trying to climb the wall, and it's raining. So it's difficulty 2 because the wall is slick. You need 2 successes to buy off the difficulty now. And then on top of that, there's a complication system. So there's now glass on top of the wall. The wall is still difficult. Well, it's raining. The wall is still difficulty 2. So at minimum, you only need two successes to succeed. But the glass introduces difficulty a complication of, let's say, level 1. So unless you have 3 successes now, two to succeed at the action, and 1 to buy off the complication, that complication is going to make life difficult. It's going to, as the name suggests, complicate matters. So as long as you have those 2 successes, the story guide, the GM if you prefer, cannot take that success away from you if you decide to spend the successes on the difficulty. So no matter what the complication actually is in fiction, it can't negate the fact that you have succeeded at the action. So the most obvious result of not buying off the complication, say you only had 2 successes and you choose to get over the wall, is that you cut yourself on the glass. It also has an enhancement system where as long as you get 1 success on the roll, you get bonus successes equal to the enhancement you have. So go back to that thought scenario, climbing a wall, it's raining, there's glass on top, but let's say you have something that allows you to climb really quickly or allows you to jump or jump high, let's say. You take the time to push some makeshift boxes in the way, and that gives you 2 enhancement on the roll. Well, let's say 1 enhancement for ease. And you roll the dice, and you get 3 successes on the dice. And you have 1 enhancement, which gives you an automatic extra success. So now you're at 4 successes. 2 to get over the wall, 1 to not cut yourself on the glass, and then 1 just to look cool while you do so. And that's basically how the dice rolling works in the game, in a nutshell. I hope it wasn't too fast or slurred. I'm going to hydrate. But that's how that all works. Makes sense, you like it? It is a pretty cool system. And then a lot of the player options are tailored around allowing you to exploit the rules in different ways, or giving you enhancement in certain circumstances, or triggering off other rules I just haven't mentioned here. But that's basically how the game works. I appreciate, obviously, this show is a bit weird in that I'm not playing the game, I'm just talking about it from a theoretical viewpoint. But hey, it's Christmas. It's the season of giving for those who celebrate such things. If it's the festive period for you, I'm going to give you this anyway. I'm going to give you a bit of knowledge. Travis, if you're in chat, please cover your ears. This is an admission you probably shouldn't hear. I've been doing this show for 51 episodes now. I started with Scion, went to Chronicles of Darkness, Scarred Lands, Trinity Continuum. I've only ever run 2 sessions of Story Path games. Well, I guess technically I ran this. Let's say, I think it was 3 for Scion. So I've run 5 sessions of Story Path games. So, I'm not an expert in the system by any stretch of the imagination, but all I'm doing is building on knowing that core understanding of how the game works at its most basic granular level. So if you want to do something like this, write community content or tweak the games, hack the games, that's all you need to know. More interested in shows where people talk about game rather than live plays, and I'm watching live play, I'm like, actually playing right now. You know what? That's fair. That's fair. The only reason I watch live plays is because I can pause them. Same reason I watch video game streams, actually, is because I don't always have the time to get everything set up to play. And I've got 20 minutes. I'm just like, yeah, just watch 20 minutes. Or I'm like, I'd run this encounter differently. Yeah, that's the problem. Scale's the other big thing that sets story paths out from the games. It's a mechanic that allows having humans and gods, also using the same dice pools. Yes, so a note on Scale. Again, not terribly experienced with it, because I've only really run Origin and Hero Scion games. But Scale allows for enhancements and multiplication of success numbers based on the difference between... there are guidelines for mixing scales and stable dice. It's all relative. So an example I can think of would be, human, baseline human is scale 1, for example. If you're a foot race with a cheetah, which would be feasibly scale 2, technically there is the outside chance that the human would win just by rolling more successes than the cheetah, although the cheetah is multiplying their successes by 2 because of the scale, because they're one step above. On the other hand, a human at scale 1 and a sports car at scale 3 probably wouldn't... The human's not going to win. Again, baseline human. Because the sports car is just so much faster. So they roll the same dice pools, the sports car just multiplies their number of successes by a higher value. But then if you are doing it the other way, if you're a cheetah in a foot race against a sports car, everything shifts up 1. So the cheetah becomes scale 1 and the sports car becomes scale 2. That's all just, abstract and probably would never come up at the table unless you're running a very specific kind of game. But still. It goes the other way as well. So in the They Came From games, if you are attacking a creature that is, I think it's 2 scale above you or something, you can't... There's no point trying. Your weapons are just going to bounce off, because they're not going to get through its hide or its armor, or it's just not going to care because you can't hit it hard enough for it to notice, for example. Simple chart and the breakdowns for narrative and dramatic. Exactly, yeah. Actually, I can... I've shared stuff before. I can show you the chart. What I'll do is I'll just take a screen cap of it and just capture the screen cap, because I don't want to faff around with tabs and... Oh, wait, no, I just opened Chrome. No, you know what? I'm not going to do that, because I don't want to faff around with window captures. What I can do, however, is just screen capture it and put it into the Word document that's currently open, and I can show you what I'm talking about, rather than trying to describe it with my words. And I'll take it from the Trinity Continuum book, because that's what we're talking about here. Where did that table go? It was not there. What? Is this one of those where the table is in a different place? Or chart, if you prefer. I'm not sure what the difference between a table and a chart is, but I'm sure there is one. No? Did I miss it up here? Okay, it turns out there is no table in the TC core book that I can see. The section on scale just gives you a list of ranks of scale. Interesting. I cannot do that. I cannot provide such information. There is, however, a chart in the Scion book. I remember that much. However, I must hydrate once more. I've been talking a lot. Actually, briefly, self-plug while I'm thinking about it, because it wasn't out last time I streamed. Last time I streamed, I made mention, I believe, of the fact that Trinity Continuum Aberrant was being opened up for material on the Story Path Nexus. Well, guess who wrote material for it for launch day? Me. Go buy it. There we go. It's an extra allegiance for your characters to join with 18 sample super science items, 4 new paths, I believe it was, and lore, adventure hooks, that kind of thing. I was quite proud of throwing it together in such a short period of time. Anyway, I think that covers everything. I think I got the right number. I think I explained it correctly. Anyway, so narrative, as was pointed out, narrative scale. When you're doing it in like not an action adventure scene, for example, you multiply successes. That's it. Or you multiply the trait that's being used to resist. So, like if you're trying to suplex, if you're a scale 1 human and you're trying to suplex a scale 2 alien, for example, the alien obviously is going to resist that much better than a scale 1 human. I don't know why you'd be suplexing aliens, but there we go. Whereas dramatic scale is more in action adventure scenes, or kind of like it's the focus of something rather than just this is happening around you. And in dramatic scale, you get enhancement equal to the 2 enhancement equal to each difference in scale. So human at speed 1, racing a cheater at speed 3, the cheater would have 4 enhancement on the roll, for example. There we go. Moving on. Of course, oh right, if it's an Aberrant, I have the Aberrant book as well, and so I'll pull it out rather than just. I accidentally opened Adobe, so this is gonna be fun. Again, just so people can see what we're on about, because I'm not entirely sure I'm explaining it clearly. It's so nice having a mouse wheel that works. Here we go. I'm not going to have it on screen for too long, obviously, because it's not the focus, but this is the kind of thing that we're on about. I'm also not going to include the Aberrant-specific tiers of scale, because we're not on about Aberrant, but this, for example, is what we're on about. So scale level is all relative as well. So again, scale level 1 could, if it's a baseline human, that's what you'd pick. But I guess scale level 1 is always going to be the lowest tier person, object, what have you, involved, and then everything's relative to that. What I do like about this table is it gives you more than just size and speed. But as you can see, this is tier and then various examples of things at that tier of scale. As you can probably guess, Aberrant, from what I've said, Aberrant does include above tier 6, but Aberrant is explicitly superheroes, so it would necessarily do so. I'm assuming that, I can't remember off the top of my head from the Demigod book, backup preview from the Kickstarter campaign, but I'm assuming Demigod and God will have higher scale stuff as well. Alt text, a picture containing a website. Well done, Word, you tried. Aberrant does also include negative scale for size changing. That is true. I thought that was a really good touch. And obviously, it made sense in fiction. Aberrant, that scale table in the Aberrant rulebook goes up to 10, though. It does also go to -9. At -8, literally small enough to touch atoms and pull them apart. In parentheses, dangerous. But again, Aberrant is superheroes, so kind of more extremes are to be expected. Anyway, so that's what the scale system is and how the scale system works. let's continue with this. So that, I believe, was a reasonably comprehensive and audience / chat / community driven explanation of TC. I would assume so. Hang on. I see Demigod lowers target number for. Yes, Demigod also lowers target number from 8 to 7, so you get 1/10. So you're now at 4 in 10 chance of success rather than 3 in 10, which obviously is quite useful. I think Aeon also lowers the difficulty number. Target number, sorry, the TN. Difficulty number, what? Sorry, I'm just speed reading. Scale is exponential, so all powers and abilities add a subtract scale, then you apply a difference in scale based on but yeah, so yeah, you don't divide the scale, there's just a much larger difference in scale. But obviously it works both ways, so if you're small and you're sneaking, then your scale is going to be theoretically higher than someone looking out for you. Aeon only resists TN when you become a proxy level sign. Ah, cool. Anyway, this is all distraction and digression. There's also collateral pools in Trinity TC Aberrant and Silent Demigod and stuff to represent collateral damage. Powers going out of control, that kind of thing. Hopefully we haven't put you off of the system. If you were listening to this and you're like, yes, this sounds like a great system, and then we kept going, and you're like, no, gosh, no, there's too much. Again, all you fundamentally need to know to run your first games or to play the game is how the dice system works. If you are not going to be running the game, really, like, it helps if the players know the rules. As someone who has been running a 4-year plus D&D campaign, it helps when your players know the rules, but it's not entirely necessary. And as long as someone at the table knows what they're doing, ideally the story guide, but not always, everyone should have fun. Collateral pool might be your favourite part of Aberrant. It is really cool. I was also very excited when I was reading it, because I read it in Demigod first. I was very, very excited for collateral pools. I like games that are like, hey, here's this thing that, yeah, sure, you're incredibly powerful, but there's a cost to it. Obviously, it doesn't work for every group, but I've got a superhero game that kind of... it's a successor to cost a lot of the time, so you'll be endangering the lives of the public, so you have to deal with that as the situation unfolds, as well as just dealing with the threat. Anyway, so this document, Horrors of the Continuum, is about how to inject horror into your games of Trinity Continuum. You will only need the Trinity Continuum core rulebook. All of the other books we've been talking about have been supplementary material to add different flavors to the game. So, as mentioned, Aberrant is superheroes, Aeon is far future psychic stuff, Adventure is pulp action, Assassins is Assassins. I keep feeling like I'm doing Assassins a disservice, but like it's so cool that I just feel just saying it's Assassins is good enough, and I don't know if that's just me. Anyway, I did jokingly consider calling this Trinity Continuum ARG, but the Story Path Nexus rules specifically state you can't start your supplements with an A for Trinity Continuum, because that's the established paradigm for official publications. So that went out the window. So we're with Horrors of the Continuum. But yeah, as I say, it's about injecting horror into your games of Trinity Continuum. It is... You will only need TC Core to use it, or Trinity Continuum Core if you prefer, but due to the nature of the story path system, you could use this with any Trinity Continuum game. You could with minor edits use it with Scion. The two games use enhancement in slightly different ways. TC is a lot more free with enhancement, to my eyes at least. And then the They Came From games kind of already deal with horror, so you probably won't be using this. Assassins is all that is needed. Exactly. And so I've discussed in great length safety tools and how to put body horror into your games. And I did 2, right? I did 2 of everything. 2 scene mechanics, 2 tricks, 2 edges. Yeah, tricks, 2 edges. And 2 gifts. Okay, I mean, I have a navigation pane. I don't know, I'm not using it. Whoop. I've already mentioned the importance of formatting and layout even when you're drafting material. Please do. It saves a lot of time in the long run, especially as if you're importing content into a template. And I have thought, potentially, that the final episode of this season of the show will be me kind of walking through how to do template and layout work in Microsoft Word, because Word isn't the best for layout work, but if you can't afford an Adobe subscription for InDesign, it's probably the best thing you've got, especially as Onyx Path do provide templates for Word templates for a lot of their products that are on the community content platforms, which, if you don't know what they are, I guess I should explain those briefly. Those are sections of Drive-Thru RPG that allow you to upload material you've written for Onyx Path, for select Onyx Path game lines. The list isn't each relevant one, but Sluritian Vault covers Scarred Lands material for 5th edition, and I'd assume Pathfinder as well, but I'm not sure about that. Definitely 5th edition material, 5th edition Scarred Lands material. Storypath Nexus covers the Storypath games of Trinity Continuum Core, now Trinity Continuum Aberrant, Scion, Origin, I believe, and Hero, maybe. Those are all the ones I've done. I need to check They Came From stuff, because I have ideas for the next season of the show. Solution Vault covers 5e and PF1. Grand. Suspected as much. Storyteller's Vault covers all of the Chronicles of Darkness lines. Not World of Darkness. That's Dark Pack material. That is not Onyx Path, as far as I'm aware. But Chronicles of Darkness. So what some people term New World of Darkness. But that's Chronicles of Darkness, Vampire the Requiem, Werewolf the Forsaken, which still has the best acronym of any game ever. Mage the because I can never remember which one it is. Promethean the Created. Although, obviously, do check which game lines are supported, but I think all of them are supported. I could be wrong. What's the Pugmire one? Realms of Pugmire, I think it's called? Yeah, Realms of Pugmire. Beneath the Seas on Nexus, Beyond the Grave will hit sometime after release. Well, that makes sense, as it's not out yet. I think it's Realms of Pugmire. Whatever the Pugmire one is, that allows you to upload Pugmire-related material. I really should know that one, because I have stuff on there, or one thing on there, but it was a collaborative project, so there we go. And I'm sure Travis will let us know anyway. But that's what the community content platforms are. You can upload material using Onyx Path published material stuff as like the basis, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you get half the royalties from it. Canis Minor, there's the one. Realms of Pugmire being the game line, you fool. Hey, I think Canis Minor is prejudiced towards Pugmire. I think we need something for the cats, for the monarchies. I don't think the pirates are organised enough to care, but the monarchies might be. Anyway, so that's what that is. So this will go up on Storypath Nexus at some point. As I say, I may do a layout episode of this show where I just talk about how to use Word for layout purposes. Probably won't be 2 hours long. I realize I've spent 49 minutes on recap and what is the game, but there we go. And I will be like posting on the Onyx Path Discord server about whether there's any interest in it, because I don't want to, spend however long putting that video together and it not be useful for anyone. But it's definitely something I'm thinking about doing for people who can't afford InDesign but do have Microsoft Word. I don't want kind of one of the purposes of the show is to lower what barriers I can that are preventing people from writing community content. Whether that's showing you ways you can write it, showing you thought processes, giving you things I've learned over the decade I've been role playing. That's a long time. To how to lay out in Word. If you are thinking about doing Scarred material, there is an unofficial Word template available. It does have instructions for use. When the official Word template goes up, I will be pulling that down for obvious reasons, because I don't want it to be. More accurately, I suspect Onyx Path will pull that down for me because of the confusion that would arise between having two templates. And that's totally fair. There's no hard feelings. Like, it's their product. My template's up there as a stopgap. But that does have some like how to use this template instructions that I will be converting into a how-to guide anyway. At some point when I have time. Time is always the issue. Anyway, so we covered body horror. Body horror being primarily what a lot of people think of as horror, I guess. Zombies, extreme illness. Hey, Ari, how you doing? Visceral reactions to things, sudden shocking assaults. And something to note also is that a lot of horror is blended. I mentioned this last time, and I'll mention it again in the future. But a lot of horror is blended, so it's not going to be pure body horror. Like, slasher flicks are body horror and, I guess, disaster horror, because you've got the countdown. Something bad is going to happen. You know something bad is going to happen. The characters know something bad is going to happen after the first half hour of the film. Side note, Ryan's Law of Cinema, of horror cinema. The first half hour in like 99% of horror movies, nothing ever happens. It's all set up. You can watch that first half hour with someone who's never watched a horror movie in their life, and you'll be fine. After that half hour, kind of, it depends on the film and the type of horror you're watching, but the first half hour usually is okay. That's my law of cinema. And by and large, it holds out, actually. But we're doing cosmic horror, and I mentioned this last time. If you do any research into cosmic horror, because it was essentially founded by H.P. Lovecraft, if you do any research into it, please do so critically. A lot of the writings that form the basis for the genre, as you can see, do include harmful tropes regarding topics such as racism and mental health. Purely because at the time that it was written, things like that were viewed as commonplace and not extremely problematic. So please do, if you do research into this kind of thing, bear that in mind. Something also to note about why I didn't stream last time I was supposed to stream. Cosmic horror and psychological horror, out of all of the 5 kinds of horror discussed in this supplement, are the ones that more often deal with mental health. And I'm not, I have mental health problems, like the vast majority of people on the planet right now. But even before that, before the whole end times, before COVID hit, I struggled with mental health and low self-esteem and stuff, such things. And I mentioned this, I think, in the introduction. The point of a horror game is to scare the player characters, not the players. But also, if you're the GM, the safety tools work for you too. Like, if you're playing a scene out, and no matter how you've written it, but it's making you uncomfortable based on either you didn't think something would affect you as much as it is, or the players are taking the scene in a direction that you, as they often will, that you didn't foresee, and that's making you uncomfortable, it is totally okay to step back, use that safety tool, and move on, or ask for a break. And that's why I took the stream off. I was not in a great place 2 weeks ago. I'm not in a great place now, admittedly, but I'm in a better place. And I didn't want to be dealing with existential angst and self-esteem issues, because that's what cosmic horror at its very, very basic core is: coming to terms with the fact that we as people are meaningless in the face of an uncaring cosmos populated by beings that exist on a scale. See what I did there with the word scale? That we cannot possibly comprehend, and they don't even notice us. And obviously, a lot of human thought is very human-centric. It posits us as, depending on who you ask, obviously, the sole intelligent life that we're going to meet for some time. I'm not going to say never, because personally I find it highly unlikely that intelligent life will evolve in a single place in the universe, considering just the scale of the universe. Universes. I also subscribe to multiverse theory, but there we go. That's a physics thing. This is not physics. This is horror. And obviously, cosmic horror as a genre stands in direct opposition to that. Like, it's not human-centric. It is very much an exploration of what can happen, of what can arise, how people can react to discovering that there's stuff out there we just cannot comprehend, that we cannot deal with, that if it ever took any interest in us at all, we would probably cease to exist in a way that we would understand, let's say. And yeah, self-care is incredibly important. Listen to Ari. Ari is a credited counselor, therapist, one of the two. My point being, listen to Ari. Yes. Anyway, so I believe my established pattern, and when I say established, 2 paragraphs and then just mechanics. So let's go straight to mechanics, shall we? That seems like a good idea. I'm just going to do that because of that, and then just finish the first draft of the superhero novella, very much blended into body and cosmic horror elements. Would that be Tarat? Am I pronouncing that correctly? I think the superhero genre. Grand. Also, I apologize if the microphone picked up me drinking. A superhero genre is one that kind of lends itself to body and cosmic horror, because a lot of superhero tropes are extreme violence, shape-shifting, and what happens when ordinary people get caught in a super conflict, let's say. It's the whole take the fight out of Metropolis thing, okay? That's what I'm getting at. If you are a normal person in that situation, that is cosmic horror on a very mundane scale. The therapist, now go practice self-care. Exactly. Listen to Ari. Self-care is important. Anyway, so, scene mechanics. There are, broadly, kind of 2 ways that, instinctively, I would apply cosmic horror to TC Core, or story path system in general. There is the mental effect. I just need to check what I wrote in the introduction. Please do bear with me. Session 0, consent checklist, lines and veils, X card. Maintaining atmosphere. Okay, I didn't mention this. Grand. So I need to add this in first. As with psychological horror below, cosmic horror will, in all likelihood, lead to discussions and portrayal of mental health, mental illness. I can offer 2 pieces of advice to handle this in a sensitive manner. 1, do your research. Make sure that you are not portraying an exaggerated version of the, let's just say, symptom of mental illness that your character may be suffering from. 2, do not name the mental illness. Other things I wanted to deconstruct was the body dysmorphia of going from being a pudgy, normal-bodied. I don't know, people think it'd be awesome, but there's a lot of horror in being a body that feels unnatural to you. Exactly, and I kind of, I think I mentioned this in one of the Scion channels in the Onyx Path Discord server about on the themes of cosmic horror and existential stuff, on the themes of apotheosis. So as I mentioned earlier, in Scion, you go from being a relatively normal person who can do kind of a couple of minor quirks to full-on god. But part of the in-world thing is that when you perform apotheosis, are you the same person that you were? Because you shed your humanity to become a god, right? A god. So what is it that continues? Are you the person you were? Are you an idea of the person that you were? Are you the collective idea of the person that you were based on other people's ideas of you rather than your own? You can use a lot of genres to discuss things of this nature, to discuss incredibly deep and, quite frankly, unsettling ideas that, on the face of it, seem, heck yeah, that's awesome! Like going from a normal-bodied person to someone who is super strong. Also, side note, I have a question for people in chat because you may have an answer to this question. It constantly bothers me. If Superman is, or any of the people from Krypton, or any Kryptonites, are incredibly, Kryptonians, Kryptonite's the rock, not Dwayne Johnson, the mineral, are incredibly strong. Why do they have the musculature that they do? Because they wouldn't have to exert themselves anywhere near as much as anyone would. So unless they do an insane amount of exercise, I don't think they'd have that body type. But that's just me. Anyway. Do not name the mental illness. This often squats and notes. This often leads to research into and portrayal of all the symptoms and effects of that illness. In most cases, no single person has every symptom. I mean, I know I'm using capitals for effect here. When I edit this, I might use lowercase and bold it, but has no single person, in most cases, someone suffering from that illness does not exhibit everything associated with it. And you will, in all likelihood, like Lowhood apparently, likely, hoof, now we're playing My Little Pony, will in all likelihood portray the character in a damaging manner. Instead, refer to point 1 above and portray 1 or 2 symptoms that could relate to a particular mental illness. But are applicable to several. 0 for 1 to have all the symptoms of mental illness to feel all the time. But thanks for that one, Hollywood. Exactly. This advice, I will say, this is advice I took from Evil Hat Games. Fate of Cthulhu? Evil Hat Games publish a Cthulhu-themed game where they stepped away from the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game's emphasis on sanity is, oh no, your mental health is going down. Now here is a mental illness for you, or an insanity as they call it. To be more, the more you engage with the mythos, the less sane you become, it is less mental illness and more you just don't connect to humanity anymore because you are too aware of the world. Especially because most mental illness is ego-syntonic, meaning most people don't realize what they're experiencing mental illness. Exactly. Yeah, like I certainly needed to take a step back at stuff I was doing to go like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm not, like, that's probably not normal behavior. Storytelling shorthand ignores the nuance of most health issues, but it's especially egregious in mental health issues. It really is. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but I saw an example yesterday of I think it was a Kickstarter product for 5th edition D&D, and the example I saw was for how to model attention deficit disorder at the tabletop. And I'm sorry, but one, the mechanics were horrendously thought out. They weren't great at all. In fact, I gave up reading them. They were that poorly thought out and dull. And two, like, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to try and deal with it here, the minute that you assign a mechanic to mental illness, it's gamified, and therefore it's entertainment. The stuff that I'm going to be doing here, I will not be evoking symptoms of mental illness. I'll try to avoid it as much as possible, I should say, because I can't avoid it. It's cosmic horror and psychological horror. But I'm going to try to do it, obviously, sensitively and respectfully, but also in a way that makes it very much clear that this isn't... how to say this? I know what I want to say. In a way that makes it clear that what's being portrayed is a symptom of an illness, not a specific illness, as I mentioned, and that this is something that someone could get over with enough help, but equally not everyone can get better. Not every mental illness can be treated. You can just treat the symptoms, but not the actual disease, or illness if you prefer. And it's horror. Yes, it's supposed to be entertaining, but it's also not supposed to be hurtful or harmful. It's horror out of, and then, I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again, out of pretty much every genre, every other genre, horror depends on, certainly now, obviously, older societies may disagree, but to me, let's say, good horror relies on respect for the material and on getting away from the ableist trope of this person is mentally ill because they are somewhat lesser than I. what I'm trying to do here, and certainly with cosmic horror more than psychological horror, because psychological horror has its own quirks, but anyone could be subject to cosmic horror, regardless of who you are. It's entirely based on circumstances. Psychological horror has its own quirks and explores different themes within mental health. But cosmic horror is a good one for getting away from that ableist idea of I'm not mentally ill now, therefore I'm never going to be mentally ill because I'm just better than that. And not everyone consciously thinks that, but culturally we have this thing of that person is to be pitied because they're mentally ill. I have probably undiagnosed anxiety issues, because the support for that kind of thing where I live right now is not ultimately worth the effort it would take to get, because mental health support in the UK is absolutely abysmal, having tried in the past. And I can cope without medication. I have coping strategies that work 9 times out of 10, and that 1 time out of 10 that doesn't work, I'm fortunate to have people around me who can help me get through it. It's not a treatment plan by any stretch of the imagination, and do not ever, sorry, I feel strongly about this, do not ever confuse a friend for a therapist, because they're very different things, or counsellor, or whatever you want, medical professional, let's say, because they can't offer the treatment plans, they can't help you get long-term better, but managing it is sometimes the best that people have, especially in a society that kind of likes to push mental health under the rug. Anyway, we're working on Glimpse Beyond second edition. We tried very hard to treat science damage and the derangements you gain from it as mental wound scarring akin to physical wounds damage you would take in traditional physical combat. Exactly. Rather than just being like, oh hey, I've gone blurry again. You've got an insanity now. Enjoy. I'm going to try and fix the webcam while I hydrate. I'll mute the microphone so you can't hear me swallowing. I think the issue with the webcam is that I keep gesticulating and my hand gets closer to the webcam than my face. So, how to put everything I've just said into words. Concise words. The aim of exploring and exploring cosmic horror, some of the exploring this genre, let's say, its effectiveness comes from the fact that it subverts, let's say, unconscious ableist thinking, because I'm not how to phrase this, and yes, I'm going to get on a woke list for this most likely, for being a snowflake. There was a wonderful thing I read quite a while ago now that in essence, paraphrasing, my first thought is what society tells me to think, my second thought is what I think, and I always try to go for that second thought because, I'm 30. I've got 30 years-ish of societal expectations that have been internalized. And things change, obviously. Things have changed. And things do continue to change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but change occurs no matter what. And some of that internalization stuff is, in English, although we don't have gendered... we don't have a particularly gendered language in English. We do sometimes gender things, and certainly I'm guilty of, the familial phrase of man or dude, and and talking to female friends. That's not or women in general, I guess. That's not always appropriate, and I'm trying to get away from that. I'm trying to step back from that and to get that out of my habitual unconscious vocabulary. But certainly, as a disabled person, when I started, when my disability started presenting, and even now when I encounter people with different disabilities than I, my first thought is still, and I'm happy to say it's getting better, but my first thoughts are still kind of tinged somewhat by slightly ableist thinking, and getting away from that requires you to be aware that it's there, and that's what I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to insult people. I'm trying to just say, hey, think about how you think about things sometimes, because it is internalized. Let's say unconscious internalized. There we go. We all have unconscious bias. Exactly. What is truth? That anyone can suffer from mental illness. Or develop, let's say, psychological wounds, because that's functionally what sometimes trauma is. Let's just put trauma. There's a perfectly good word for it already, Ryan. There's a perfectly good word for it. Or develop psychological trauma in response to stressful stimuli. Real measure of a person is how we respond to those biases once we realize we have them. I try to respond positively and overcome them every day. I will say, as a storyteller, GM, and just role player in general, that this hobby definitely is a good one for helping you get out of your own head and analyze yourself from the outside. It has proven therapeutic effects anyway, and despite my best efforts, I could never get that side of GMing off the ground in my local area. But yeah, it's definitely very good for giving you that space to step out of your own skin and analyze your own behavior, especially as someone who GMs more than they plays, because obviously I portray a lot of people at the table as, the supporting cast, let's say, trying to step away from the idea that the GM is not a player, as well as obviously allowing me to analyze for characters that are bigoted or prejudiced, kind of analyze how and why that might occur, so that I can then deal with people like that in the real world better, let's say. Obviously, I don't get it right all of the time, and I am, as I've said, guilty of unconscious internalized ableist thinking, and I'm trying very hard to get away from that and to get better and improve and get over that. But as I said, 30 years of it ish. That's a lot of work to do, and it's never going to be like an overnight process. Anyway, let's get away from the heavy stuff. Get back to my get back to what I was doing. Scene mechanics. So, cosmic horror. Usually, let's say, is triggered in one of two ways. The internal way of the realization that the protagonist is a infinitesimally small part of a much grander whole. Whether that is through direct contact with, I'm going to say creature of the mythos because we are building on Lovecraft's work here. So with contact with the creature of the mythos, or through reading a forbidden tome that strikes them on a fundamental level as possessing truths of the universe, or of seeing a mythos creature that the brain just cannot comprehend. So, for those who don't know, The mythos does encompass a wide variety of creatures, some humanoid, some very much not. Some based on real myth, some based on myth, some based on nothing at all, just Lovecraft's own inventions and later writers' inventions as well, by extension, obviously. So it does kind of swing. Everyone who has contact with the mythos. What am I trying to say? Yeah, let's put it this way. Everyone who has contact with the mythos is changed, but not everyone who has contact with the mythos is fundamentally changed in the way that cosmic horror would evoke. Must AFK, but I should be looking. Sure thing, Plastic Age Plays. Thank you for being here. I'm going to be here for like 25 minutes before I leave anyway, so if I forget later, best of luck with your game this evening, and I will try to remember to set the title accordingly. It's going to be a long title, you realise, but there we go. Wonder if I should consider writing about resiliency in this work. Hey, if I knew anything about resiliency, I probably would, at least to summarise it, but I know little about resiliency. Thanks much, Lee. No worries. So, no worries. I would watch, but it's 11 o'clock at night for me, and that is quite late. So how are we going to reflect these with scene mechanics? So the first one is pretty easy, I think, and we're going to handle the smallness of the human in comparison to the vast cosmos that awaits. And I'm going to call it inconsequential beings. And how did I do this? Okay, so it was a narrative explanation. Okay, cool. So when faced with the fact that humanity is but a speck in an uncaring cosmos, and nothing an individual does persists. I need to phrase this simply. I'm probably going to get these two mechanics done and then just wrap up, leaving the rest of the stuff for the next room. Persists long beyond the span of their years, relatively speaking. Some people sink into a fatalistic gloom. So nihilism, or if you want to assign a name to it, although obviously you shouldn't, depression. So let's model a fatalistic gloom. Melancholia, if you prefer the classical term. What I'm thinking for this is, as the mechanic itself is termed inconsequential beings, I think we're going to mess with complications in some way to have less of a consequence. I did have an idea for this, but I don't know how well it actually works in practice. So my original idea was that my headset's off balance, that's why it feels weird. Was that the mechanic kind of emphasizes the fact that nothing we do matters, that nothing we do lasts, so why bother? By removing momentum as a source of consolation. So a consolation, I should point out. So when you fail a roll, when you roll a dice, obviously if you get 8, 9, 10, you succeed. You get a success. If you don't manage to buy off the difficulty because you A, didn't get enough successes, or B, just got no successes at all and failed, you get consolation instead. Often this is a point of momentum, which goes into a communal pool, which can be spent for a variety of effects, and we're not really getting into here because it's not technically relevant, and I spent a long time explaining the system earlier, which again, I don't mind doing. That is the point of this show. But here we are. Now, I don't think anymore that really makes sense as a mechanic to model this kind of thing, because that's more modeling isolation. Your personal efforts aren't inspiring other people to do better in their efforts, is what that kind of thing would be modeling or portraying at the tabletop. Now, we could just build on that and have it as momentum expenditure is increased by 1, because it just takes more effort to overcome. You know, you find the task more draining than you ordinarily would, which, you know, for those who don't know, this is a symptom of depression, I believe. So that's something I can do, which, now that I've vocalized it, does seem quite likely. Or could do something that doesn't necessarily get rid of complications, but lessens their impact because just don't care. In the long run, it's not that big a deal. I'm just trying to think how that could be mechanically reflected. So I thought, mechanically you could reflect that as any conditions inflicted as a result of the complication are reduced by 1 stage at the end of the scene if possible. So like if you graze yourself, by the end of the scene you just don't care that much about the graze, so it heals. So functionally, mechanically it's healed because it's not troubling you anymore. Which is also a possibility. And complications can also be things like, here's a complication on a future roll, or increased difficulty on a future roll. So it'd be kind of like, I guess it would be any lasting conditions are reduced by 1 at the end of the scene if possible. Any instantaneous conditions are reduced by 1 when they become relevant if possible. So that's more an uncaring apathy. Now, I think we'll go with the gloom aspect. Okay, so we'll go with the first idea. I think that models this kind of thing better by modeling the emotional mental drain of realizing this kind of thing and what's the point of it all, fatalistic nihilism kind of aspect of cosmic horror. So for the duration of the scene, after exposure to such a truth, all momentum expenditure costs an additional point of momentum. All momentum costs are increased by 1. If the character expends any other resource, and botches their roll, it must expend a single point of momentum immediately. I need to clarify this. Spending momentum from the pool. When spending multiple points of momentum from the pool, the total expended is increased by 1. So I have a light on my mouse just while I'm typing. And it's the same color as the notification light I get on my phone when I have a message. And I keep thinking I've got a message, and I glance down, and I'm like, no, you idiot, it's your mouse still. It's your mouse the last time you looked as well. Let's R increased by 1 as a emotional and mental fatigue weighs them down. Now I could have it. So if you get as I mentioned earlier, if you get a 10, 10s explode and you keep rolling. I could also have it as if you roll any 10s, you expend an additional point of momentum. But I think for now, this is okay. A lot of work. So the vast majority of the time, my first draft is largely what makes it through to the release, because obviously you in chat are helpful. Talking ideas out really helps when writing material, even if it's to yourself. So a lot of the time I'm happy-ish where it is, and obviously through the magic of uploading an updated file, I can change it on the fly anyway. So there's that. For extremely large truths of this kind, the story guide may extend the duration of this effect, or increase the momentum cost, or both, if they really hate you, and if you come face to face with an elder god, with an outer god, sorry. So that's coming to terms with the truth of things. But what happens when you come face to face with an actual being? Well, Lovecraft had this word that he used a lot called squamous. Hang on, I need to assign this a heading. Nope, it's heading 3. Which is a great word. Fantastic word, in fact. Only actually means covered with or formed of scales and scaly, but that's not how he used it. Oh, I'll be honest. It went in there a lot, so I'm just going to call it squamous, because it's a fun word, really. It's squamous horror. Some beings are inherently wrong and warp both the world and the perceptions, let's say emotions, of those who view them. Producing an unsettling effect akin to hearing a clock tick and tock at uneven intervals. and volumes. When present in a scene with a being such as this, okay, so let's see. Ooh. Let's do this. When present in a scene with beings such as this, each approach is modified slightly. So, for those who do not know, in story path system games, your 9 attributes are divided into the physical, social, mental arenas, and the power, finesse, and resistance approaches. So, for example, the physical being might, dexterity, stamina. Yeah, I won't explain any further than that. And then, so might is your power approach, dexterity is your finesse approach, and stamina is your resistance approach. And your character will always have a favoured approach, which gives them an extra die in that approach, etc., etc. So, because this thing makes the world around it just wrong in a way, it affects how your character acts and how they do what they do. So, did I say power? Did I mean force? Hang on 1 second. Again, I know too many rule systems. Screams. You're a character sheet, load faster. I meant force, sorry. If I said power, I meant force. The force approach adds an let's say as a level 1 enhancement to rolls. Oops. But any being acting against the player character gains 1 enhancement. To their roll. Let's say the first being acting against the player character after using this enhancement. Again, enhancement is an automatic success. So you're putting more of yourself into whatever you're doing in the scene to get through it faster, to beat the thing down faster. But because you're putting more of yourself into it, you're revealing, like you're putting yourself in a worse position because you're throwing yourself into it. In a D&D example, this is reckless attack for the barbarian, for example. Finesse approach takes twice as long to complete as the character attempts to remain calm and perform the tasks as subtly as possible. In action adventure scenes, so the combat scenes and other like high stakes scenes, any finesse based roll Right. I think the game term is simple action. Hang on, I will check and explain the difference. Please do bear with me. The trouble is I can't plan these things out in advance because I never know what I'm going to think of based on my own thought processes and what chat says. Ordinary action, sorry. Any finesse-based ordinary actions become mixed actions with a difficulty 1 counterpart. Let's say a difficulty 1. Well, it'll be integrity and cunning, in all likelihood. Let's say difficulty 1, mental attribute plus integrity. Action. So, what that means, breakdown of what I'm talking about there. So, largely it doesn't make any difference until you're in combat, but ordinary actions are something that you can achieve with a single roll of the dice, that you can do on your turn in combat, so to speak. So, fire a gun. Mixed actions, you can combine ordinary actions into mixed actions where you can attempt to do multiple things at once. So, fire a gun while driving dangerously. The trick is that you calculate the dice pool for all of the actions involved. You roll the lowest dice pool, or the smallest, and then you assign the successes from that dice pool to the actions to each individual action. So you could succeed at one, fail at another. Failure on this action levies a level 1, and I'm sticking with level 1 throughout for a very specific reason. Complication on the character's next dice roll. Dice rule! I mean, dice do rule. We all know it, but there we go. And then stamina approach. So this is more just like stubbornly working through issues, putting your head down, bulling forwards. How would a squamous horror affect this? So we've had throwing yourself into the situation. We've had trying to remain calm, so things just take longer. Oh, it's about waiting it out. So the stamina approach levies a level 1 complication to all rolls in the next scene as the effects of the unsettling creature are repressed and okay, let's reword this. The stamina approach represses the effects of proximity to the unsettling creature. For one scene, a character, not stamina, resilience. Making a resilience-based roll may delay the effects of another approach in the same arena for one scene. If they do so, the effects occur during the next scene, and any difficulty or complication values are increased by 1. Because take it from me, repression is not the way forward. It makes the problem worse in the long run. And that's what that's modelling, hopefully, in a respectful manner. Yeah, that's it. Didn't get much done today. Time for the outro. But hopefully it was an interesting look at a couple of ways you can model things like this in the story path system, as well as, of course, explaining the story path system in detail for people who aren't familiar with it. Most important thing when working in Word, click that save icon. Especially if you don't have autosave turned on. It was very interesting. Good, I'm glad. Now, I mentioned at the start of the episode. You know what? Let's do this first, so people can then leave. I'm always happy to talk about role-playing stuff. At Comrade Bubbles is my Twitter handle, so if you are on Twitter, please do consider following me over there. At some point, I hit 100. I surpassed 100 followers without realizing it, so that was cool. I'm always happy to talk about role-playing stuff there. I post a weird mix of role-playing observations and ideas, Twitch self-promotion, and stream of consciousness, surrealism, that kind of thing. I do also stream on Twitch as Comrade Bubbles. Hang on. What was the... Was it BTS? I can't remember the command we agreed on, Travis. Anyway, I do also stream on Twitch as Comrade Bubbles. Video game stuff, very rarely role-playing, but I'm always happy to talk about role-playing stuff with my chat and my Twitch community. So follow me on those two places for if you want to talk role-playing stuff. You don't have to, obviously. I do also lurk on the Onyx Path Discord server, where I will stick my oar in, as the saying goes, if I feel like I can contribute to a conversation. A lot of the time I can't, because you probably guessed by now I've flipped between game lines, and therefore I don't know the intricacies and specifics of like lore and stuff, purely because I don't have the time to learn it. But I will stick my oar in there. But yeah, the Onyx Path Discord community is a very welcoming place, and they're always happy to help out with any questions you may have. That command appears to be broken as well. I just remembered it existed. Yeah, no worries. I just remembered it existed. My Discord, Onyx Path Discord, my Twitch, my Twitter. Those are the main places that you can continue discussions of such nature with myself and other like-minded people. Now I'll go back to the Monday meeting notes for those who missed them at the start of the stream. Best place to go for any project updates, timelines, and that kind of thing within the Onyx Path sphere of influence. Here is your Cliff Notes of the Monday meeting notes version. Cliff Notes version of the Monday meeting notes even. Christmas wishes. TC Animo did quite well. Scion, Origin, and Hero on Foundry. Woo, again. Assassins available for pre-order if you have liked the sound of Trinity Continuum and aren't interested in superheroes or psychic characters or punching Nazis on robot dinosaurs. You can play an assassin in the modern world. Some discussion about the fact that Onyx Path cannot possibly comment on whether anything has been submitted for Demon the Fallen because that's in Paradox's hands. Couple of links to sales, Teach Your Kids to Game, Legend Lore, End of Year Sale. Come back in what I assume to be 7 hours' time for the Party Beach creature feature, They Came From Beneath the Sea Jumpstart. That is one hell of a title. And then 3 hours after that starts, the Haunting of Abbeyham Priory, They Came From Beyond the Grave Jumpstart. Slightly less of a title. Links to podcasts, the schedule you'll see in the post roll, links to actual plays and promotional materials, virtual tabletop stuff, sales again. On sale this week. If you do enjoy the streams later, the Party Beach Creature feature and the Haunting of Abbeyham Priory. Both of those go on sale on Wednesday. TC Assassins. That book cover is so cool. That also that's a pre-order now. Actually, you can pre-order that now. I think that's mostly it. The whistle stop tour of the Monday meeting notes. So yeah, I'll let the post roll as usual. I'll let the schedule play out a couple of times. Hang out and chat with any lingering questions. After that, if you have any more lingering questions, please do feel free to swing by my Twitch channel. Give me a follow, and I'll be going live in about half an hour or so. As I say, happy to talk about anything. But we have, of course, been talking all stream, some of the stream, tiny bit of the stream, about beings from beyond time and space. And there is, of course, one that is particularly relevant at this time of year because he is pretty much all-seeing, omniscient and omnipresent. He knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake. So please do have a great festive period, even if you don't celebrate Christmas, and I know not everyone does. That's a very, very, very like Western-centric, Western-focused view of the world. Hopefully you have a great holiday period, even if you are working through it. Hopefully the new year is better than the last one. I'm not going to say it can't be worse because, boy howdy, 2021 showed us it could be. But I'm going to say hopefully it's a better year for you. Hopefully whatever you want to happen happens. I'm certainly hoping to get contract work through for TTRPG writing and start building a portfolio of not community content, or not independent community content anyway. As Arius pointed out, do remember to take care of yourself. The holiday season, after 18 plus months of not socializing because I've been shielding, it's going to be hard for me, and I know it's going to be hard for other people out there, especially in this community that seems to attract introverts. So take care of yourself. Take time for yourself if you need it. If you are finding yourself overwhelmed, remember that it is quite all right to step back, to step out of a room, find a quiet place, pet that pet at the party you've gone to, hang out by the fridge. The kitchen's the best place in any house party anyway. That's where all the food is. And I'll see you all in the new year, I think. The 4th may be a bit of an issue. I should be streaming on the 4th, which is when my next stream should be anyway, but I'll obviously keep the relevant people updated about that so that the promotional stuff happens as it should. And do come back later for the creature feature. Double feature. There we go. Come back for the double feature later on the channel. Please do stay safe. Please do stay healthy. Please do stay wholesome. And sure, today might be the solstice, and I hope you're having a great solstice if you celebrate the solstice. But, it's the dark... In the Northern Hemisphere, it's the dark time of the year. So why not go out there and be the light you want to see in the world? I'll see you around.